Welcome everyone. Welcome to another beautiful movie gathering, and we're going to take a deep dive tonight, a deep journey. This is a treat. It's been a while since I've seen or shown this movie, but actually years ago I was quoted as saying, if it was at the end of your life and you were on a desert island and you were given your choice of one last movie to watch, I said this would be the movie you would want to take you right into heaven. And it's that deep. So it's hardly a movie. This is an experience. We are going into an experience tonight, and yeah, it's such a deep experience. I can hardly even call it a movie. Almost like that word does not convey how wonderful of a tool this is to open the heart up. And what spurred it on was in looking at the English poll and the Spanish poll, and the number one theme that came in number one in both polls was moving from guilt to guiltlessness. And that really grabbed my attention, like, well, we need a movie that can really go deep in the sense of exposing and uncovering and allowing us to release this deep-seated guilt. So oftentimes when I talk about the amnesia, the belief in separation and then the amnesia of forgetting God, that is forgetting light, forgetting love, forgetting God and the Christ, and taking on a false identity and a false memory that involves the cover of time and space, and of protecting that unconscious mind from being uncovered and released. So the projection of time and space is the attempt to project guilt and displace the guilt from the mind to the world. But as we know from the Course, ideas leave not their source. So the projection of time and space didn't do anything at all to alleviate the guilt. It's almost like, if you had a sore tooth and you tried to just take a little squirt of Novocaine or something in there, you can cover it and dull it and numb it a bit, but it doesn't release the guilt. When the Novocaine wears off, there's still the toothache. And when the ooh la la, the pizzazz of time and space and the cosmos may seem to distract the mind for a while and make the mind seem busy and caught up in much ado about nothing, is what Shakespeare called it, still the guilt remains underneath. And most of the guilt is unconscious. So that's why for most human beings they say, well, there's daily life and then there's intrusions of upset that seem to come to the human being throughout the lifespan between birth and death. But basically, the projection, what it does is it tends to distract away from the pain and the hurt and the guilt, and also it seems to dilute it so that the artificial life, which is time and space, the artificial life, which is the dream, it isn't a reality at all, but it seems to be something that is offered as a way to kind of stabilize the mind a little bit by minimizing the fear and the terror and the chaos. So what it seems to be daily life, people would say, oh, it's got its ups and downs, it's got its good times and bad times, good days, bad days, high emotions, low emotions, but that's all part of trying to dilute the intensity of the separation. And that's why all defenses, including projection, the whole projection of time and space, is made to minimize the fear, minimize the guilt, minimize the chaos without letting it go. That's an important part in there, without letting it go. It's just a way of hiding. It's almost like the cosmos was made as like a hiding place, a place where Jesus says in the workbook, a place where God can enter not. The world was made as an attack on God, a place where God could enter not. So time and space are made by the ego as the hiding place, to hide from the light. Because the belief in separation, the ego made up its own God, and this God is a punishing God of retribution, and that's why the hiding. See, the ego's got a whole story. You better hide. The ego says, you better hide, because God will strike you blind, God will destroy you, God will obliterate you, says the ego, if you would go back to that light. And that's, again, why I think probably the one parable that Jesus told the most was the prodigal son. That even if you seem to squander everything, you squander your entire inheritance in what the Bible calls riotous living. And sometimes we've tried that. We've tried the riotous living for sure. Even when you seem to squander it, it doesn't matter. You can still go back. No penalty, no consequence. In fact, the opposite of punishment or obliteration, it's just pure love. So much love that Jesus says in the Course, you cannot understand how much your Father loves you. In this world, you cannot understand how much your Father loves you. The love is so intense and so great, and then it's just, we start to see this scheme of cover-up. So the light was pushed out of awareness, and actually the darkness was mostly pushed out of awareness too. And then Jesus tells us that underneath this perceptual world seemingly of the five senses of time and space is what he calls the ring of fear. And even the mystics and saints, the saints like St. John of the Cross, talked about going deeper, deeper, deeper into the mind and then coming to the fear, like an intense fear, which St. John of the Cross called the dark night of the soul. Vipassana meditators sometimes get together and to compare notes. How's your meditation practice going? Let's meet in Thailand and talk about it. They talk about a wall of fear, an unexpected wall of fear that they hit when they go down so deep in their mind. And so that's what the benefit of a movie like this is. This movie, Solaris, is actually a mechanism where we can all go down together and go face the fear and go past the fear to the light. And that's the value of this movie. It's actually a journey into the mind. You can feel it, the music, the scenes, everything about it. It is so well made that it's almost just like it's like you're in Disneyland and you're going on one of these rides. But instead of going down on a roller coaster ride, this is more down a tunnel through the darkness to the light. And also what's beautiful about this movie is a lot of us know that there must be a universal law that governs everything in time and space, and there must be a universal law in heaven. And basically God extends, love extends, and the universal law that we've all come to hear about is basically that giving and receiving are the same. The way that Course in Miracles says it, he says, all that I give is given to myself. So giving and receiving are the same. They aren't different. That when you go deep enough, you find that the universal law is that giving and receiving are the same. You give love to receive love. And I think in the Bible, if you had to look in the Bible to see how does the Bible put this universal law, some of you remember, as you sow, so shall you reap. That's like a farming. Leave it to the Bible for a farming metaphor to explain the universal law. But this is the law of the light. This is the law of love. Jesus talks about it in lesson number 50, I am sustained by the love of God. Basically, he's saying that the love of God is the only law that there is. We're used to, on earth, many different laws, and then people trying to break the laws. But isn't it nice that reality has only one law? And it's love. And part of that law is, as you sow, so shall you reap. As I give, I receive. And for the human being, which is a construct or a projection of guilt, this law is not in full awareness. You can imagine going and talking to somebody in the world and saying giving and receiving are the same. Let's say you went to someone who was a Bitcoin trader and you said giving and receiving are the same. It's like, well, I don't know about that, but I want to receive a lot of profit. And the giving part, I don't know. I'll see how generous I am at my church or charity. I'll decide. I might, if I'm really generous, I'll tithe 10%. You see, it's not equated as giving and receiving are the same. It's like receive your salary, receive your income, and then I guess certain religions have the tithing, which is 10%, but I would say the general population is not often into tithing. They'll keep a bigger percentage than 90%. But the only law there is the law of love, which is all that I give is given to myself. And this is very threatening to the ego, because the ego is the belief in lack. The ego is the belief in scarcity. The ego is like, bah, humbug, giving and receiving are the same. In what universe are you talking about? And Jesus is saying, well, actually, in heaven it applies, and on earth it applies, because it's still in your mind. Ideas leave not their source. And you can try to hide and pretend it's not there, but the universal law is still this beautiful law of all that I give is I give to myself, and giving and receiving are the same. Universal law is not changed by time and space. So you might say that even when Jesus defines a teacher of God, he has a very interesting way of defining a teacher of God. He says, a teacher of God has seen no separate interest between himself and his brother. No separate interest. Wow, that's amazing. No separate interest with my brother. Well, the only way that could be true is if giving and receiving are the same. If all that I give is given to myself, then I'm always receiving exactly what I give in mind, not in terms of form, because Jesus says in this world, when you share a possession, you divide its ownership. You hear that word divide. Divide is a sense of lessening. So it doesn't make any sense to the ego. The ego does not understand that giving and receiving are the same. It doesn't know what all that I give is given to myself. The ego would say clearly, if you had $1,000 and you decide to share that $1,000 with a brother or a sister, then each would have 500. So by sharing, you have less. And then if you share it with 3 people or 5 people or 20 people, your percentage goes down. You have less. And you can see that from the ego's belief system in scarcity, there's only so much that exists, and if you share it, you have less of it. Some of you might remember the beautiful movie Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon, where St. Francis, leaves his wealthy family, and he takes his sandals off, and he's got a tattered robe, and he goes walking around and begging for food, and some of the people in Assisi just throw it at him. They throw it like, oh no, we got a beggar. Oh, his father was so well off, and then he leaves, and now he's out begging for food. Throw it at him. They're throwing the food at him. When he finally goes off, and he and his brothers, they do start to help out in the field and everything. There's a scene where they have a loaf of bread, and then the monks are all there, St. Francis and the monks, and one of the people that's working on the field wants to give the monks a little bit of bread, and another one is so angry, and he's like, but if we give them food, then we'll have less. You see, that's the food. We'll have less bread if we feed the monks. And the workers say, but they have less than us. And he says, they are the sons of the landowners. These are rich people. You can't be sharing anything with them. They're just they're monks. They say they're monks, but they have rich families. So this whole scarcity thing runs so deep that the law of this world is supply and demand and gain and loss, and everything of this world is based on false scarcity beliefs. Basically, that there's limited resources, there's limited time, there's limited wealth, and everything is limited. And then, yes, the universal law is all that I give is given to myself. That giving and receiving are the same. Now, in this movie tonight, George Clooney, is it George?
Yeah.
That's yeah. Oh, that's right. His dad. I always think about it. If I said the right name, because his dad was a TV broadcaster where I grew up. He was right across the river. Nick. They look kind of like each other. That was back in the day when Nick was as young as George. But George Clooney, he plays Chris Calvin, who's a psychologist. And he is going to be called in on an emergency mission to go to this far, far off, like a space station that's near this. I guess it's like a planet that is emanating light from it, called Solaris. And there's some strange and crazy things that are happening up there at the space station, and they are sending him in as a last resort to try to rescue this. They don't know what's happening with the crew. Eventually they lose contact. They have one last transmission from him, and basically they're asking Chris Calvin, the psychologist, if he'll go there as a rescue mission to try to rescue it. Now, what's so interesting for all of us is that Solaris, this planet that's emitting this light, is this kind of beautiful, kind of silver purple light. It's very beautiful. But that Solaris is represented in this movie as this divine law of love. And if giving and receiving are the same, then what does that tell us about time? What does that tell us about cause and effect? It must be that if giving and receiving are the same, maybe cause and effect are together and not apart. So you don't have to give and wait to see if it comes back. It simultaneously is just the divine law. That's just how it works. Now, I love this movie because when I first saw it, I was like, well, I just had these huge insights going on in my mind, and I was thinking, wow, that would start to explain the strange things that are happening on the space station. Because in the space station, the inhabitants, the astronauts that are in the space station, have these strange things going on that at night when they sleep and dream, if they're dreaming about a child that they had, or a wife, or somebody, a brother, somebody that they had in their life, and they're dreaming of them, the laws of the world would say, well, those are dreams, nighttime dreams, but they aren't dreams about real people, or they aren't people that are physically present, they're just in the dreams. But with Solaris, because giving and receiving are the same, and because mind is singular and unified, and it's not the way it seems to be in the projected world of linear time and space, that when people think of and dream of people, they are appearing in their space station. So this again to me was like very reflective, like back on Earth, if somebody that you know, a dear friend, a relative, a loved one, whatever, if they die, then generally speaking, except for Jesus and his raising the dead, but generally speaking, dead means dead and gone. Jesus is always bringing exceptions, but remember, he was operating under the divine law. So dead didn't always mean dead and gone. Lazarus seemed to be dead, but he was even in the grave, and he had stinky grave clothes on for 3 days, and he wasn't dead and gone, he came out. Because Jesus said, Lazarus, come forth. Well, in this movie, this is what we see, that Chris Kelvin is a psychologist, and we will find out that his wife, Rhea, had committed suicide, and he goes on this mission to Solaris, and then these strange things start to happen to him, like they're happening to everyone on the space station. Basically, that these characters are still part of consciousness, but the closer you go to this light of Solaris, everything is present. It's not like things are spread out and diluted into linear time. It starts to bring everything that you think about. And you can imagine how that would help your mind training. If imagine everything you were thinking about was right in your face. We've got a lot of great movies in the MWGE collection. One of them I like is Dustin Hoffman, Sharon Stone, and Samuel L. Jackson's Sphere, where they go underwater, and then their unconscious fears, they dream up a giant squid, a giant sea monster, that's a probe, I think, that comes from outer space, that comes down there under the ocean with them, so their thoughts are manifest, because giving and receiving are the same. And this is the same thing, except instead of a probe coming from outer space, now it's happening at a space station right next to Solaris, so thoughts are made manifest. You can see that would speed up your mind training. If all your fears and all your doubts and all your thoughts were manifest immediately, or in close vicinity and proximity, you would become more aware of what you have to release and forgive, instead of spreading it out over lifetimes, which is what time does. Time is like a diluting factor. So I do know people who, that's part of their spiritual journey, whether it's with psychedelics or ayahuasca or something, or whether they go in for past life regressions, and they start to regain the memory of all these lifetimes that have been pushed out of awareness. It starts to bring the fears, bring the doubts. That's what astrology does. That's what numerology does. There's lots of helpful things that can start to give you more of a broader context than the little stream of human perception between birth and death. That's what astrology does. It basically says, well, you're this sign and you have your moon here and so on and so forth, and these are the things that you've chosen before you even came, though your lifetime was planned out. The things that you would deal with, the issues you would deal. That's why people find astrology helpful, because it sometimes starts to give them clues. Well, clues is one thing. Having it in your face is another. It's one thing to go through over years a series of past life regressions. You take notes. Oh, okay, I'm starting to connect the dots. Boom! This is the divine law of giving and receiving are the same. Then it's right there in your face, and then you really accelerate your forgiveness process, because you aren't having this unconscious denial. That's the problem. The dream you dream in secret, the unconscious part, is the part that's out of awareness. So that's what's dictating your experiences on the surface of consciousness, and yet that's why people are shocked by some of the things that seem to happen to them as a person, because they're perceiving themselves as the subject, and there's a lot of objective things that they're objecting to because it's too difficult. With Solaris, this is going to be a good ride for all of us, because we're going to be right there with Chris Kelvin, and we're going to start to see him face the things that he has pushed out of awareness. And it's great that he's a psychologist, because instead of completely flipping out, he's just terrified. A psychologist goes, Chris. It's almost Christ. It's the first four letters of your name. K-R-I-S. The beginning. So basically, that's what this ride is about. And I remember seeing it, because in the end I thought, wow, I think this is amazing, because in the end we see that Chris has to face his fear of the light. He, even at the beginning, where the people on the space station, they don't know what's happening. They have to face what is in front of them. And in one sense, I think that's saying you have to face it, and then you have to release it and surrender to the light. And that's what this movie means. Solaris means of the sun, literally. And I was saying to the group before, Solaris is an interesting baby name, because it is a baby name without a gender. It's not a male or female or masculine or feminine name. It's a name without a gender. And you could say that's what the light is. That's what the spirit is. Spirit has no gender. Spirit is pure light. What was the thing we were reading this morning? I think Svavanai. Spirit is in a state of grace forever. Your reality is only spirit. So therefore you are in a state of grace forever. And then we're watching Solaris, which is light is, literally light is. It's the fear of reality, whereas the human being thinks there's a fear around scarcity, around resources, around harm to the body, around protecting the body in the future. There's psychological defense mechanisms, guarding and protecting the personality self. And then we're told by Jesus that reality is nothing like anything that we're perceiving. He says even the real world, which is the happy dream, is nothing like the world that you perceive. The real world is a world of happiness and light and love. And so Solaris helps us start to see that, wow, I think I'm afraid of all these outcomes in form in this world, but actually I'm just afraid of the light. And what is that but reality? Isn't that interesting that there's a fear of reality? That's what we're dealing with. Every single seeming moment of every day we're dealing with a fear of reality. And this is really symbolized in this movie. You can really feel it with Chris Kelvin, with the psychologist. As I said, he doesn't completely flip out, but he is mortified. He is terrified. And that's a psychological, he has to, he really has to face the fear. That's what psychologists are supposed to do, right? Face the fear, help people face their fears. And now it's like, whoa, this is the mother lode of fear. It's called the light. And that's really what we're dealing with. And it helps remind us of that. So I'll probably come in from time to time in this movie, and I think we'll have a very, very lively discussion after this one, because it's a journey. I think by the end of this movie, you will feel differently. You will actually experience yourself and the world in a different way. That's why I was saying, if you had one last request on a desert island, this is your movie. It's like, let's clear away that unconscious fear and go to the light. No more death. Let's move past death. Let's move past the belief in death. Let's move beyond and transcend the fear of the light. And that's really what this movie is about. So enjoy the movie, and I will pop in from time to time to join you in this deep dive, and we'll go in together. So thank you. All right, you can see the fear on his face because he's identified as being a psychologist, and one of his beliefs has been threatened by what's appearing or what's happening, which is his belief that dead and gone means dead and gone. It's the belief that there's a difference between our nighttime dreams and our daytime dreams. It's common for people to talk and say, I dreamed about whatever, someone who's passed away. That happens because we have much more flexibility, we give much more leeway to our nighttime dreams, but not so much to the daytime dreams. So, he wasn't surprised at all that he was dreaming of his ex-wife, but when he woke up and her hands were touching him, and he looked and saw who it was, that was a violation of what seems to happen during daytime waking life. He said, "Am I awake?" And he was kind of slapping his head and trying to be aware, is this like, am I awake from my nighttime dreams? And so this is something that for human beings who believe that cause and effect are apart, and we believe that there's separate things and there's separate rules and laws for, we'll even say for nighttime dreams, when sleep at night versus what seems to be daily life. It seems like they're different. Although Jesus does tell us in the Course that all your time is spent in dreaming. He doesn't really make a distinction from what we seem to generate during what seems to be nighttime sleep and what seems to be the perception of the world. He's basically saying they're the same, and the reason that they're the same we will see from Solaris is that there is one divine law that's in heaven and that's behind all appearances, is that really we're all one mind. It's just the bodies seem to be separate and the personalities seem to be separate. But actually, whatever is being dreamed, whether it's a nighttime dream or it's something that we're perceiving as our daily life, Jesus is telling us, as we learned in our just recently completed The Illusion of Time, that I see only the past. I'm just seeing past figures that have been peopled from the ego's past. So people, as I said in one of my videos, people aren't people. Everything is a projection of what's believed in the mind. And if you believe in the ego, you believe in the past. Jesus calls it the unholy instant, the time of terror. Some of you who were on that weekend retreat remember, I think Eric even spoke the word, the ego peopled the world. So all the characters, the character that seems to be the person that we seem to be, and all the other characters, or the characters that we've experienced in the past, or the imaginary characters we think we'll experience in the future, or if you happen to go through past life regressions and you found out that you were Cleopatra or some other character, they're all generated from the ego. And they're all aspects of the past. Except the mind believes things, so it has made up its own categories, like dead and gone. Oh, they lived in a prior time, or they died. And yet with Solaris, that's what I mean by it's concentrated in the sense that people basically always represent, in distorted perception, unfinished business. Something in the mind believes that the past is still here. And Jesus is telling us, we're but reviewing mentally what has already gone by. So every person that we meet, every person we think about, whether they're remembered from the past or we seem to be experiencing them in our daily life, or we're imagining seeing them, like going back home to visit mom or dad or something, they're all part of the ego's projection, and it's all basically, if I boiled it down to, all the people are aspects of the past that are unfinished business, and in one sense they have been given a reality because the mind still wants to believe in linear time. It wants to believe that the past is not over and gone, it's still here. So every person that you meet or think of from an egoic perspective, they are unfinished business. They are a grievance projected out into a specific form. So that's why the ego peopled the world, to project the grievance from the unconscious mind, which is just fear and guilt, from the ontological belief of separation from God, and splintered it out into all these characters. And then it gives them life, and it gives them a mind of their own. It says they're alive and breathing. They have a life of their own. They have thoughts, private thoughts of their own, a private mind of their own. And all of it is a projection of guilt. All of it, without exception. And so Jesus has different names for these characters. One that I think is interesting, he calls them shadow figures in the Course. He says you still are believing, you're still giving reality to these shadow figures. And as long as you're giving reality to them, you will experience guilt because you believe in the reality of the shadow figures, but you also believe in the guilt, which is the shadowy belief, the shadowy ego that's underneath that made all the people. So, of course, the ego projects out time and space, and it's saying, no, these are not projections of time. These are people. These are real people, and they all were born. They all had. They were born of conception between a sperm and an egg. They have a beginning point and they have an end point, and they are autonomous. It's kind of like Pinocchio, a puppet that wants to be a real boy, and then as soon as he thinks he's a real boy, he's got to deal with all kinds of issues. He gets attracted to Pleasure Island, and it goes on and on. It turns into a grim fairy tale. It turns into a nightmare. So basically Jesus is teaching us that everyone that we perceive is coming from a projection of that ancient instant of guilt, which has already been answered by the Holy Spirit, which has already been corrected. But as long as we give meaning to these characters, as long as we read meaning into them, the good, the bad, all their personality characteristics, what we like about them, what we don't like about them, their strengths, their weaknesses, their flaws, their beautiful things that we feel, their abilities, as long as we keep giving meaning to the shadow figures, then the guilt is still unquestioned and in the mind. So it's lesson number 2 from the workbook. I have given everything I see all the meaning it has for me. Everything, without exception, has been projected from the mind. And if you're unconscious about what you believe, then these unconscious ego beliefs are projected out as if they're exterior to the mind. It seems like the body that seems to be the personality and all the other bodies are all part of an external world. And Jesus is saying, it's not external. Here comes our little sweetie. He's trying to pick a spot here. He's checking out. Here comes Isa. So basically what Jesus is saying is all the characters you meet and everything about them that you perceive is what you gave them, meaning what your mind gave them. The mind reads all the meaning into the characters, and it's the ego, it's the belief in the ego that's doing this. It's not the Christ. But it's what you gave them. So they aren't really whole characters. They're all puppets acting out a prearranged script, just as it was decided. So recently during the weekend, there was a guy, what was his name, Barton, was asking me about what's the script is written, can't we change this and this and this? And I said, no, there's no escape from what must occur. The past, that Jesus is teaching us in lesson number 7, I see only the past, and yet, because of the trick in the mind, it seems like they're given the meaning of being alive in the present. This is that maitre d' present I was talking about. Oh, we're all present watching the movie tonight, Solaris. Ha ha ha. This is not the present moment before time was, it's pure light. This is the ego's trick of a blip, of a moment that's the maitre d' from the past to the future, thus keeping a tight clamp on the guilt. All the characters, past, if you imagine you're watching them now, that's the past, and in the future past I call it, it's all part of a scheme, a very devious trick in which the guilt is projected, and all the meaning that the characters seem to have is given it to the mind, from the mind that believes in the ego. We'll say the ego belief is doing the projecting. So they aren't whole characters. We talk about seeing the whole. Well, the whole is a whole different way of perceiving the world in a simultaneous way. It has nothing to do about perceiving a whole person. And as we go on with Solaris, we're going to see the same thing with the characters with Solaris. He was dreaming of Rhea, and he was dreaming of the time they met, he was dreaming of the party, he was dreaming of their time together, he was dreaming of their time being together, kissing and sexually. He's dreaming of the whole thing, and then as he comes to and he opens his eyes, here comes Rhea's hands. And the reason he's so terrified and so shocked is because it has violated the belief that nighttime dreams are different from daytime dreams. That what's happening during what's called real life in this world is different somehow. Jesus is saying, no, actually these are just generated characters, and they don't really have minds of their own, and they don't really have thoughts of their own, and they don't really think apart. This is the sneaky dream of separation in which the characters all seem to have their own private minds and private thoughts, their own private memories, their own private perspectives, 7 billion private perspectives, and Jesus is saying, that's actually not reality. It has nothing to do with heaven, and nothing to do with what's real and true. It's a hallucination that's being projected from a distorted mind, a distorted belief, and then it seems so real. And what a convincing way, if you believe that you're a person, to surround yourself with lots of other 7 billion others. That really starts to lend a reality to it. Like, I'm not the only one. I've had so many people ask me when I go around the world, they say, am I in your dream or are you in my dream? Implying what? That everybody has their own personal, separate dreams. But the ego peoples the world, except it has many variations. So it's a very sneaky trick. And we're going to see from this movie that basically we're always facing our thoughts, except in time and space they seem to be so spread out that we think, oh, my last relationship, my ex, or oh, I did a past life regression, my previous lifetimes I was this, and this, but now I'm this. No, none of the characters are what the mind really is, but it's got this perceptual nightmare going on. So every time we judge a person, like we say, wow, I'm glad I'm not like that. Thank God, by the grace of God, I'm not like that. Well, as we point the finger and we say we're not like that, actually we're giving the meaning to what we're pointing to and saying, I'm glad I'm not like that. That's why Jesus said, judge not lest you be judged. Whatever meaning you read onto the world and you read onto these characters is what you're reading, you still believe yourself to be. And you cannot escape from the world until you realize that you're none of it, that you've never been it, that none of these private thoughts and private worlds and private people and private everything have ever been the truth, because God didn't create separate people, separate places, separate situation with private minds and private thoughts. That's why we have expression sessions to bring up these private thoughts, to bring them into awareness so they can be released to the Holy Spirit. Because unless they're released to the Holy Spirit, they're believed to be real, and their grievances, they're just acted out. The body is like a concretized physical form of a grievance in the mind. And you could say, well, it's not just one body. I'm dealing with 7 billion on this planet alone. God help me if I go learn how to astral project or go to different realms. I've got more to deal with, different realms, different planets and everything. It's the same dynamic though. It wouldn't matter, when people say, I hope after I die I reincarnated a better planet than Earth. It's like, well, there aren't any better planets or worse planet. I hope I can be around better people. I want to be around more like-minded people. Well, they're all like-minded. They're all us, but they've been disguised based on the past. They've been filtered, and they're not whole. So literally, we're always talking to ourselves because there is nothing outside of the mind. I remember one time back in around 1994, I think it was, 1993 or 94, I was up in Michigan and I was at this house where a group of students were living, and there were 2 children that were actually living in the house. And we were reading the course workbook lesson where Jesus says, "You seem to speak to those who are not there." He says in the workbook, "And those who are not there seem to answer you." So we got just to that line, "You seem to speak to those who are not there, and those who are not there seem to answer you." And all of a sudden, there was a knock at the door. I said, "Hello, who is it?" And then little Matthew, the boy, said, "It's me, Matthew, let me in." And then we all laughed because it was like Jesus was playing out a little skit of what he just said in the workbook. You seem to speak to those who are not there. You speak to them by a name. You greet them with a name. You say hi, and you greet them by a name, and then they seem to answer you. If that doesn't reinforce the belief in separation, that's the most common human interaction that there is. You speak to somebody, you greet them by name, and they go, "Hi, how are you doing?" And they greet you back with another name. You see, even in the most simple, basic greetings, the ego is playing its trick to make it seem like there's more than one of us. But there's only one of us. I know a lot of times people would say, "Oh, I don't like that when Christians say that Jesus was the only Son of God, that the only Son of God, and I think one time they asked Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda, they said, was Jesus the only Son of God? And he said, well, yeah, in terms of the Christ, yes, but in terms of the man, no. You see, even Paramahansa Yogananda was pointing to the unified spirit, the one. In terms of the Christ, yes, there's only one. There's only one perfect child of God. Oh, Paramahansa was right on top of it. And then he said, but in terms of the man, who seemed to be separate and walking apart from other men and women, that's not the Son of God. Jesus didn't even call that character the Son of God. He called that character the Son of Man. You might, if you remember the Bible, he'll say the Son of Man comes, and Son of Man, and then sometimes it comes through, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. That's Christ. That's the Holy Spirit. That's the one self speaking. There's only one of us coming through. Before Abraham was, I am. Oh, there it is again. The I amness of the perfect Spirit is prior to time. It's not squeezed in the middle of the past and the future. The present moment is before time was, Jesus tells us. So,
here's what I found.
What did you find? My phone is talking to me. I sometimes get very animated, and Siri gets activated. We're just doing a skit here to show the foolishness of the whole thing. People say, that's not even a real person. Yeah, there aren't any real persons. Siri is as real as anyone that we're seeing, anyone. So here we are, Chris Kelvin, he's a psychologist, he's been sent up, and they don't know what's happening. And then Snow told him with his arms moving, he said, I could tell you what's happening, but that wouldn't really tell you what's happening. He's basically saying you're going to have to experience the same thing Gordon said. Until it happens to you, there's nothing to discuss. Because why? Because we are getting a taste here of the universal law, that giving and receiving are the same, that there's nothing outside of mind, that there aren't really separate people with separate minds and separate thoughts. It's just one of us. There's only one of us, and if we judge any aspect of that one, what did Jesus say? Judge not, lest you be judged. You cannot escape the judgment that you lay on the world. You think they're separate and different? You say, I'm glad I'm not like that. The ego's like, good, got you again. You're pointing the finger and judging or condemning or saying, I'm glad I'm not like that, when it's like a self-judgment. All it is an attack thought. It's a self-criticism, but it's projected as if it's somebody else. But it's not. It's just an aspect of the past that is still believed to be real. Now this movie is going to really show everything I just told you in the last 5-7 minutes. You're going to see it in this movie. You're going to see that to the psychologist's mind, that is like, talk about transcendental, transpersonal psychology. Chris Kelvin's not a transpersonal. We need to send Ken Wilber up to Solaris. He may not freak as much. Send Frances Vaughn. She passed away, but we know she didn't really pass away. Send Frances Vaughn or her husband Roger Walsh. Send an eminent transpersonal psychologist, and even that, it's a bit of a stretch. But transpersonal, why is transcending the personal important? Because the spirit is transcending the personality. The spirit is the capital self, capital S self, and everything that's going on. Jesus actually calls it a hallucination in the workbook. Sometimes we would call it a nightmare. At certain times when we judge it, we go, this is a nightmare, this is a total nightmare. Well, not to the Christ it's not a nightmare, but to the mind that believes in the separation, it can go from being a pleasant walk in the park, a pleasant walk in the sun, to a nightmare pretty quick, just because the judgment can shift from, it's a beautiful day, it's a sunny day, the birds are chirping, la 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 la, life is good, boom, nightmare. But it's because the whole fabric of the dream is a projection. It's not like there are good projections and bad projections, because all projections are impossible. Jesus says in the Course, you either extend or you project. You either extend the truth or you multiply illusions, he says in the workbook. Wow, that's pretty clear. Extend the truth or multiply illusions. God just extends love and light. Christ just extends love and light. The ego projects. There is no such thing as projection in heaven. And so what's going on except the attempt to hold on to the past, to believe the guilt's still real, unconsciously, but to hold on to the secret dream and then project meaning onto the dream, onto the characters, as if they're doing it to you. That's what's needed to be a victim. You have to have some character that's going to play out the destroyer, like Kali the destroyer. Someone's going to play out the bad guy, the evil one, the criminal, and then somebody else plays out the innocent victim. And Jesus is saying, you will not escape from this trap until you see that they both are the same. That's why our lesson for next year is make this year different by making it all the same. You have to see that the projected victimizer and the projected victim are both attack thoughts that have been projected. There are no victims and victimizers in heaven. There's no victimizers and victims in spirit, but this is from the unconscious mind. It's projected it to make it seem like they are different. And in form, they do seem to be different from the ego's judgment. But Jesus is just saying, no, that's just an attack thought. In heaven, there is no such thing as victim-victimizer. You're just reading meaning from the past. You still believe the past is present. You still believe that it's here. You don't see that it's over and done. And all he says you're trying to do when you keep reading meaning onto these shadow figures, generating these shadow figures, is he's saying, you don't want the guilt to go away. You actually believe that there is such a thing as good guilt. You even divide guilt up into good guilt and bad guilt. You're talking to somebody and you tell them what you did. They say, oh, you should be ashamed of yourself. You should be ashamed of yourself. Is that the Holy Spirit? You should be ashamed of yourself? No. It's this the belief that there's good guilt and you should be ashamed of yourself. You should be guilty. It's pretty funny. Jesus is saying, this is your problem. You think there's good guilt and bad guilt. You still find guilt attractive, but at certain times you think it's undeserved. But at certain times you should be guilty. You should be ashamed of yourself. Has a parent ever said that to a child or a teenager? You should be ashamed of yourself. Or they'll say things like, this hurts me more than it hurts you. What the hell? There's something fishy about it. This hurts me more than it hurts you. Why should it hurt anyone? Jesus is like, well, if you give up these shadow figures, you'll realize that it's all love and light. But as long as you keep playing the game of guilt, and you keep dividing the world up into the good guilty ones and the bad guilty ones, I like how the ego makes a whole continuum of guilt. It's got tyrants and dictators on the far end of the nasty, nasty, nasty. And then at the other end of the guilt continuum, there's these things called white lies. I used to talk to my grandmother, sometimes she'd say, did you tell the truth? Well, I said this. Well, that's okay. That's just a white lie. A white lie. No harm done. It's a lie, but it's a minor lie. And not a major lie. Nazi Germany, concentration camps. Minor lie. You look good today. When inside you're thinking, what side of the bed did you get up on? You having a bad hair day? Oh, you look good. A compliment to cover over an unconscious judgment of somebody looking like they just got out of the wrong side of the bed. That's like a minor. That's no. They would say, at least you didn't say what you were thinking. Jesus doesn't care whether you say it or you think it. The guilt comes from thinking it. So it's in one sense, the world would say there's a big difference between thinking of killing somebody and acting it out. Just like our Chris Calvin says there's a big difference between dreaming of your ex-wife and waking up with her hands on top of your body. That's a big difference. But actually, Jesus is saying, no, that's not. Dreams are dreams are dreams. All your time is spent in dreaming. You're just dreaming of separation. Don't divide it up into the good dreams and the bad dreams in terms of form. It's just a dream. And when you are aware that you're dreaming, Ken's favorite thing, awareness of dreaming, merrily, 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 life is but a dream. The world is but a dream. El mundo no real. You have to get to the part of starting to see the unreality of it, because as long as you feed reality into it, that's the ego trying to do that. So here we go. Now, Chris's reaction, he is shocked, he is afraid. He was sent up there, he thinks, to rescue. He's part of a rescue team, and now he did not expect to go to sleep. He locked his door. Do you notice he followed Snow's advice? He locked his door, and then here comes these hands, and he was not prepared for that. So let's just see how he handles this perception. Okay, there it is. That makes my point. You have to have a transpersonal psychology to deal with this stuff, because traditional psychology just says, that is weird, that is strange, get rid of it. Like psychology might say, take a pill, take strong medication. If you're seeing people that aren't there, then that's called a hallucination, and traditional psychiatry would say you need... Some of you might have seen the movie The Kid, with Bruce Willis, where this younger version of himself shows up at his house, and he goes immediately to get strong. He goes into the psychiatrist for strong medication, and he basically tells the psychiatrist, make them go away. And here it is, it's acted out right here. It was so shocking, it broke his belief system so strong, it violated his belief system of how the world was supposed to be, that he gets her in a pod. She thinks she's exploring, he's taking her on a nice exploration of the pod, and then he shuts the seals and sends her off into space. That's a pretty strong symbol of get rid of them. Sometimes that's what you hear from relationship advice. You tell, here's what's going on in my life, what do you have to say? Get rid of them. That the ego, that's one of his favorite tactics. Get rid of them. Where even Jesus addresses that when he says in the healed relationship section, that's one of the things the ego will say, get rid of them. And he says something like, here, not this now, or something like that. Like, don't miss this forgiveness opportunity, don't miss it. You have to see that it's the judgment. Pluck the offense, pluck the judgment out of your own mind and be healed and happy, instead of using the time-space projection thing of rearranging reconfiguring. Get rid of them, get them out, throw them out. Sometimes parents will say, it's my way or the highway, or it's my house, and as long as you live in my house, you play by my rules. And if you don't want to play by my rules, saith the ego, then out. You can take that body and you can go out of the house. And that's just, again, the attempt to get rid of guilt by rearranging the projection. And Jesus is saying that'll never work. You need to forgive the projection. You need to release the projection in your own mind. Release the thoughts of the ego. Release the beliefs of the ego, but don't attempt to alleviate the guilt by changing the form. Seek not to change the world, seek rather to change your mind about the world. Change your perspective by releasing your attack thoughts. That's basically the whole thing right there. Lesson number 23. I can escape from the world I see by giving up attack thoughts. He doesn't say, in lesson 23, I can escape from the world I see by by sending people away, or I'll eat vegetarian, I'll just be a vegan. I'll go back to nirvana with my vegan belief system and everything. No, he's saying, no, the killing is not of the animals, it's the ego belief system that's the attack. It's the ego belief system that's the judgment. It's not killing in form. It's holding on to the belief in the ego, which is the whole belief in linear time. That's the judgment. That's the grievance right there. Okay, let's see where he goes. First try, he's freaked out and he puts Rhea in a pod and pushes the eject button like a James Bond movie. You're out of here, Rhea. You're beautiful, but you're out of here. And now we have to see what he's going to do, because he has never encountered anything like this in his psychology in his clients. He's trying to help them adjust to the world, but now he's been faced with the biggest threat of his life. An ex-wife who has returned into his bed through the power of his mind, and he doesn't understand that, so he's got to go through some forgiveness here. That's just too good. You're getting all the answers. This is the last movie you have to watch. It saves you money. You can save on your budget if you can get this one. What's her name? He doesn't even. Will she come back? He answers the question with a question. He's concerned about his own sanity and how violated his projected world, how violated his perception is. What's her name? Will she come back? Do you want her to? Here we go, we're getting down to Course in Miracles basics, everything. Truth will be returned by your awareness, by your desire, as it was lost by your desire for something else. So that's what we talk about with the Holy Instant. You can only enter the Holy Instant by desiring it. You can't do something, you can't even think of doing something to enter the Holy Instant because it's still imagination, it's still past and future. If you think of an action, I'm going to do something to enter the Holy Instant, Jesus is saying, well, pray. Just pray, desire it, and bring it into your awareness by your desire. And everything that we seem to experience in form is the result of our desire. Admittedly, as long as our let thine eye be single, and as long as our desire isn't single, then the ego, we've put some of the power of our mind, we've put it into the ego, and then the ego splinters it out. Like, you ever see like these prisms where the sunbeam comes down and it comes through the prism, and then suddenly you've got a whole rainbow of colors on the wall. That's what happens when that beam of light, that is the miracle, goes through the prism of ego belief in separation. It comes out in many different colors, and the desire seems to be very, very splintered in this world. But everything that happens, comes through our desire. I am responsible for what I see. I choose the feelings that I experience, and I decide upon the goal that I would achieve. And everything that seems to happen to me, I ask for and receive as I have asked. There it is. And in Lesson 152, The Power of Decision is My Own, he basically says in Lesson 152, everything that you perceive, without exception, is the result of your decision in the mind. And of guess that decision still seems to be egoic when we talk about specifics, because, as I said in the weekend, Jesus says, you have elected to be in time. You have elected, you've chosen to be in time. You've chosen to identify with time instead of eternity. You've chosen to identify with the body instead of spirit. And you have elected to be in time, and now Jesus has to use our willingness, which is a form of desire, and our will, to help us clear our mind. Blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God. We're going through a purification here, and we should be grateful for everything that we experience. Even when we're upset, it's telling us something. It's telling us, wow, I'm still reading meaning where there is no meaning. I'm still giving those shadow figures meaning, even though it's upsetting me. It's my choice to read that meaning onto them, and I can stop doing that. I can see that's not my will. That's not my Father's will for me. My Father's will is for perfect happiness. And then you can start to see the value of letting go of whatever, because you see, I have given everything, I see all the meaning it has for me. And we can stop doing that. We don't have to continue on with this ego charade of reading meaning onto things. So, there's so many good parts about this movie, but at this point, even, in this beautiful little conversation with Snow, these meetings with Snow are pretty good because Snow doesn't know what's going on. But he's at least saying, now he's saying, do you want her to? Do you want her back? He's saying, will she come back? Do you want her to? It comes down to, what is it in my mind? What do I want? And we have talked about that too, where Jesus is giving us an alternative to wanting outcomes of the world. He says, the peace of God is my one goal, the aim of all my living here, my purpose, my function in my life, while I abide where I am not at home. So I even hear sometimes Advaita teachers, sometimes some non-dual teachers, they say, well, even if you want to wake up, you're screwed. And it's like, well, actually, that actually is a good desire in the mind to wake up. It's just when you project it to time, I want to wake up in the future, then you're screwed. Because you're putting the enlightenment off into the future, and then of course you believe that it's going to take time. Remember the immediacy of salvation section in the Course? Be not content with future happiness, for it is not your just reward. For you have cause for freedom now. Jesus is basically saying your main problem is you believe there is a gap between now and the time when you accept forgiveness in the future. And that is the gap right there. That's the belief in private minds and private thoughts, is thinking, oh, it's going to take time for me to forgive. The only problem with the idea that it will take time to forgive is it's going to be hell in the interval between now and then. You've got hell to pay. Because not in reality, but in perception, it's like it's going to be in the future. So it's like, oh, I've got to suffer. Then I finally find my way in the future, and la 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 la, enlightenment. Jesus is saying, no, you need to watch your mind more closely. watch out for those future hope thoughts, because you have cause for freedom now. So, okay, here we go. He's now he has a question for himself. It's been brought back to him from Snow. He says, will she come back? And Snow says, do you want her to? You got to like this dialogue. It's good stuff. He's already drifting off into people pleasing there. Was I here yesterday? No. He didn't say, yes, you were here yesterday, I ejected you out into space. See, the thing about it is we're used to thinking of people, if we say they're alive, or then we say they're still alive? Yeah. Where are they? Well, they're somewhere on the planet, or up in space, or if they're an astronaut or something. But they're in the cosmos. They're in the cosmos, and then if they're dead, well, dead means dead and gone. They're gone. And what Jesus is teaching us in the Course is that my thoughts are images I have made. We would say there's a difference between seeing somebody, perceiving somebody, and thinking about someone. I was just thinking about so and so. I haven't seen them for a while, but I was just thinking about them. I haven't seen them. They're not physically present with me, but I've been thinking about them. And he's obviously been thinking about his ex-wife Rhea, but he was saying, no, it was were you alone? Yes. Was that difficult? Easier than trying to be with someone else? There's this line in the mind that starts to, say when people are dead or gone, that's a different category than being here. I talk about my grandmother Lillian. Right, Susan? We use the Lillian name. And yet, is Lillian present? Is Lillian really, really here now with me? Jesus is saying, yeah. Yes. She didn't die when she was 99 and disappear. She's still here. And why would she still be here? Maybe because there's just one of us. They're all still here. We're all here because it's all mind. So nobody goes anywhere. This reminds me a little bit of lesson 132, I think, in the workbook, where Jesus says, "There is no world apart from what you think." And then he says, "There is no world!" exclamation point. So he's basically leading us in. First he's telling us, he's easing us in with, there is no world apart from what you think. Like the world you perceive is your thoughts. There is no external world. There aren't any external people, there's no external cosmos, there's no external anything. He says that in the Course. There is nothing outside you. That is what you must ultimately learn. And then what does he have to say about the mind? He says, you are mind, holy mind, W-H-O-L-L-Y, holy mind, purely mind. What else does he have to say about the mind? Mind reaches to itself. It does not go out. Within itself is everything. You within it, and it within you. Wow! Those are great lines, because he's describing the whole, the entirety of everything being mind. And the only distinction he makes is, he says, if you believe in the ego, then you've forgot your divine mind, but now you've split the mind into a part that remembers truth, love, light, the Holy Spirit, and something that doesn't remember God, the ego. So you've divided, even mind, you've split it up into two. If you believe in the ego, you've split your mind between two different emotions, love and fear. Forgiveness and grievances, whatever you want to call it. So this is really a great movie, because he apparently was thinking of all the fond memories of Rhea, of Dylan Thomas poetry book, of I'll marry you. After 15, 20 years, I'll just stop asking. And then she tries to, which poem of Dylan did you like the best? And he doesn't know any other poems. She said, I'm not marrying you, because she likes poetry. He doesn't, he's faking like he knows poetry. It's all this banter going on, but he obviously was thinking about her still with a fondness, still with an attraction, and then when he wakes up, there she is. She's still there. So that is showing us too, it's showing us lesson number 128, the world I see holds nothing that I want. The only value that this world holds, I think Eric mentioned this on Friday night, is that you pass it by, be passers-by, because to the extent that you want it, you will experience it. And to the extent that you want the peace of God, or to know God more than anything in the world, then you're on the highway of heaven, so to speak, if you're going that way. So it shows the power of the mind, and it just shows, this movie is really showing us the full extent of the power of the mind. So it's like we're pulling the lid off the cover. We're pulling up the covers. We're looking behind the curtain, like in The Wizard of Oz. We're Toto. We're pulling the curtain away, the curtain of projection, which is what Oz is about. Always about this external, big, giant skull. Oz has spoken. It's the projection that's fearful, but we have to see that we can stop the projection at any moment. We don't have to keep reading meaning into things. Okay, here we go. It's getting interesting now. Now we're seeing our Chris Calvin, what he's gonna do now. That's pretty profound. She says, I have these memories, but I don't remember being there. And I have these thoughts, but she's starting to just reflect this idea of starting to become more and more disidentified from the memories. The movie The Island, the movie Dark City, memory implants, memory imprints. That's all the ego has given us, is lots of false, linear, past and future implants. Instead of implants in your teeth, your gums, these are mind memory implants, not put there by a dentist, but put there by the ego to convince you that you're not the Christ. A hypothetical world of past and future, in a make-believe world of past, present, future, of linear time, all false memories to convince you that you're separate from God, that you're a flesh creature now, that you're a creature of time, that you have a beginning, that you will have an end, and that you have a so-called life in between birth and death. And it's all part of a trick to guard against the holy instant. That's what we were discovering when we had our illusion of time, that's why the present moment is the gateway to eternity. And yet, we always can choose the purpose. He says time itself is not the problem, it's the purpose that you give. If you give it to the Holy Spirit, the Holy Spirit will collapse it down and take you back into the holy instant and the remembrance of God and eternity. If you give time to the ego, it will use it as a device to keep you asleep and keep you dreaming, because the ego needs that dream to seem to continue so it can perpetuate its own false sense of existence. So Jesus talks about sleeping dreams, and he even talks about waking dreams, where he says, a smile has come on your sleeping face. So he's using the metaphor of being asleep and dreaming, but a smile has come to grace your sleeping face, because these are happy dreams. Happy dreams are dreams of non-judgment. When we learn to just trust and follow the Holy Spirit, and we don't judge the dream and judge the world, then it turns into a happy dream. And that's the transition back to waking up from the dream entirely. It's a dream of non-judgment. That's why Jesus said, "Judge not, lest you be judged." And then he tells us, in case the mind starts to get spastic and go, "Oh no, I'm never going to be able to stop judging." You don't understand, Jesus. I'm a judgeaholic. Oh, I'm a judgeaholic. He's like, no. The Holy Spirit will guide you, and that is the judgment of the Holy Spirit, the instructions, the guidance that you receive from the Holy Spirit will take you back to the holy instant. You don't have to worry about it. The Holy Spirit can use anything the ego made. The ego made judgment, and then the Holy Spirit uses judgment as guidance and unwinds your mind from the belief in separation. So that's why the guidance and the intuition is so important, because it's really, you're just seeming to take steps, but he told us in the time weekend that all the steps that you will take, you've already taken. It was all part of a prearranged awakening script, you might say. It's really ultimately not in the script itself, it's in the mind. But so I think this is kind of cool, because here's Chris, and now, first of all, he sends her away because he can't deal with it. She's there, so he puts her in the pod and pushes the button, and off she goes into space. Then he lies about it. Then now he seems to want her back. And now, what's he doing? He's making future plans. Well, he's also giving her drugs. He's like a psychologist. You're fine. Here, just take this. I'm fine. You keep asking me that. I'm fine. He's getting back into the psychologist banter as if she's like a patient. But then, you're going to be fine. I'll tell Snow and Gordon about you, and you come back to Earth with me. What's he doing? Future plans. And now he's gone from ejecting her one day into space, and now you'll come back to Earth. It'll be fine. I'll talk to Snow, and I'm going to make everything right here. I'll talk to Snow and Gordon, and I'll bring you back to Earth. So this just shows you what the ego is up to. It's so afraid of the present moment that it just goes back to past, future, and ultimately that's why it takes a lot of faith, just pure faith, to just keep surrendering and following the Holy Spirit every day, because that's all we can do. Because it's the Holy Spirit's function to wake us up. And the Holy Spirit has the guidance. And we are the receivers of that guidance. And so it's a good match. A mind that needs guidance and the Holy Spirit giving the guidance. It's a good match there. But you can see in this movie, Chris now, he's kind of caught between shocked and need to get rid of her, and now he seems to be starting, the codependency of the ego is coming in a bit now, because now he's starting to feel he needs her, and she's quite bewildered. She's really reflecting back, I don't understand this, and I don't think I can live with this, because she's got these memories of the pregnancy test, and the memories of pills, and the memories of them quarreling. They're kind of quarreling, fighting. She's got those memories, but she doesn't feel that she was actually there. She just feels that they're memories she's aware of, but she doesn't remember being there. And that's a beautiful reflection too, because in the end, none of us will remember being here. That's a good thing. We don't have to go and talk about our war stories. In heaven, they're gone. Remember that time when I killed you and you killed me, and then I abandoned you and you abandoned me, and then I rejected you and you rejected. No, I don't. Okay, yeah, forget about it. Okay, here we go. Have you ever had conversations where you're being talked about being destroyed by somebody who's intent on firing a negative Higgs boson field stream at you and wiping you out, and you're sitting there at the table? But this is definitely no private thoughts. Gordon is sharing all her thoughts, but this is the attack thoughts. The thing that's underneath the fear is the belief that there's something that's not you. That in this case, it's not human. So Gordon's got this idea. We've got not humans in the space station, and she's right away saying, what are they made of? And her intention is to kill them, or eradicate them, what are they made of, and this and this and this. But these are just, in the end, it's all just attack thoughts. It doesn't matter the form that they take. It's in the mind where they have to be released. They can't, you can't kill them in form, you can't birth them in form, you can't help them in form, you can't hurt them in form. It's because everything is mind. That's why I keep saying, I think the other day I was saying, haven't I had a video where I talk about it being a perceptual problem? Ken's like, well, yeah, more than one. You've been going on and on and on for years. It's a perceptual problem. It's a perceptual problem. Yeah, we heard that, David. No, really, it is. It is. It doesn't matter whether it's Aman Kumar saying that people getting raped or starving in India, or it just doesn't really matter. The important thing is to start to realize what a perceptual problem is. It's a distortion in mind. And why would God place the answer where the problem isn't? Why would God place the answer in a projection that He knows isn't even real, doesn't even know about? But the Holy Spirit is the answer in the mind for the misperception. But you can't really accept the correction while you think it's something else. So if you keep believing the projection, which has been put there by the mind, following the ego, then that's why it makes it seem like it takes so long to wake up. Because you're trying to handle effects, or you're trying to deal with the projections. And yet, there is no escape dealing with the projections. It's coming inside and seeing the impossibility of projection. Now that's a cure, but not in trying to handle or fix the projections. So that's why he says, seek not to change the world, seek rather to change your mind about the world, because Jesus is saying it is a perceptual problem and it has already been corrected. But you won't be able to accept that correction if you still are dinkling around with the projections. Some of you, did anybody see the movie Titanic? You know, Titanic, the engineer, the designer, the architect of the whole ship was on the ship. And then there was a big party going on, a big ballroom and food and everything going on when they first started talking to him and telling him, we've hit an iceberg. We've hit an iceberg. And how many compartments of the ship, he designed the whole thing, have filled up with water. And they told him, and he said, it's sunk. He knew instantly. He was the designer of the ship. He knew he didn't have to wait hours to see if the ship would stay afloat or sail. They asked him how many. He said, how many compartments filled up? You know, that's it. He knew instantly, because he knew how many compartments needed to not have water in them for the ship to float. He built the ship. He designed it. What Jesus is saying is, you know, don't think you can handle this guilt with the projections, because the projections are how you keep the guilt. The projections were made so that you would see the guilt outside as if it was, you had nothing to do with it. Like, how's your day? I had a bad day. What went wrong? This went wrong, this went wrong, this went wrong. Really, Jesus is going, yeah, projection. You projected that day because you believed in the guilt, but don't try to pin it on the day and think that certain events ruined your day, because it's the whole projection of the guilt from your mind, trying to displace it to form, is where that's how you're keeping it. He said if you keep projecting guilt, you're going to keep it. And if you see it for what it is and give it to the Holy Spirit and forgive it in your mind, then it's gone. But the projections won't work. That's why the blame game never works, you know. Even in this movie, you can see that with Chris, you know, at first he tries to eject Rhea and get rid of her that way. Then he apparently wants her back and misses her, and so she appears, and then they have their first conversation, and she's like trying to figure out, well, where was I? Was I here yesterday? No. Oh, the people pleasing. You know, now he wants her, and he thinks lying to her will have a better way of keeping her than telling her the truth. So you can see how it goes from attraction to repulsion. The fear of something that he doesn't understand, get rid of it, and now he's trying to hold on to her. And now he's in a conversation. Remember he just told her, he said, I'll talk to Snow and Gordon, and it'll all be right, and we'll go back to Earth. He's getting torpedoed, because Gordon is overtly talking about how to exterminate her. And he's got plans to take her back to Earth. But this is the way it works with the projection. There is no solution, you know, not to get rid of it or to try to keep it. It's still the same thing. What a great movie! I'm getting excited watching this movie. I think that's why I probably said it's the last movie you ever need. It's unveiling everything, you know. There's nothing being kept hidden with this one. Okay, here we go. There are no answers, there's only choices. And he wants to figure it out. This is really what the light is doing. Jesus is streaming this light into our mind and just saying, you keep looking for an outcome, you keep looking for a way to work it out in form. You keep trying to find, almost like the world is a Rubik's Cube, you keep trying to work with the Rubik's Cube to work it out. And, then the Chris Calvin just says, I'll figure it out. I'll find a way. And really the point that this encounter is showing is that the question still is coming from Chris Calvin. What does Solaris want from us? And he's told by this Jabarian-looking character, why do you think it has to want something? You see, that's like anthropomorphizing. That's like projecting human motives onto the light. And that's all that has happened with time and space. Gordon, she's saying these creatures are not human and they must be destroyed. And that's pretty much what one version that the ego has of God. Like, you can't trust God. God will hurt you. God will destroy you. God will mess your life up, and so on and so forth. Those are all the projections onto it. And yet, it's the flip side of that would be somehow thinking that God is rooting for certain outcomes, like he's rooting for certain people or certain groups or certain cultures or certain things to happen that are favorable and other things that are unfavorable. That's still anthropomorphizing. It's like projecting a split world onto God and thinking God plays favorites, or God likes certain people better than others, or God likes certain behaviors better than others, Kind of like that old Christmas thing, He sees you when you're sleeping, He knows when you're awake, He knows if you've been bad or good, so be good for goodness sake. That's, I guess it's supposed to be about Santa Claus, Saint Nick, but it gets projected onto God, as if God has favorites or favorite things. There's things that are better than other things. And really what the Course is saying is, what you do, you don't have direct control over the doing even, or the form of things. Your mind in the thoughts that you think is where the focus needs to go. And then you need to start to realize that all attack thoughts, whatever they seem to be, are keeping the mind from knowing its peace and wholeness and harmony. And therefore, it's not a behavioral change, it's not a big action, a heroic act that will save mankind. Even that's been projected onto Jesus. The blood of the Lamb, Jesus, as if Jesus had to suffer and die on the cross for the sins of mankind, that's still projecting it out onto form. It's still projecting it to that little event 2,000 years ago of a man on the cross taking away the sins of the world. I think they did ask Yogananda about that too. Like, do you believe Jesus died for mankind's sins and everything? And it was like, well, actually, the actions of a person, that wasn't the important thing. Yogananda said it was Jesus' teachings that were important, not the action on the cross. It was the teachings of forgiveness, the teachings of gentleness. Someone smites you on one cheek, turn the other cheek. He was focusing on the teachings, and that's the same thing. That's what Jesus is doing with the Course. He's saying, it is with your thoughts alone that we must work. He's saying, I have to help convince you to give up your attack thoughts and to come back to your whole mind, which is just pure love and light. Because those attack thoughts aren't real. They never were you. You never were there in this place called Earth. You just believed it. And you believed that you had these judgments and grievances and attack thoughts. But really, the real you could never judge. It's not that you have to stop judging, he's just basically saying, you never judged in the first place. You're the Christ, and you are created perfect, and you never have sinned. You never could pull yourself away from God. That's just not you. Those thoughts aren't you. And that's ultimately why he's saying, judge not, because he's saying, because those aren't your real thoughts. You can believe in them, and you can try to make them seem real. What you believe, he says, you make true for you. Not true in reality, but, if you believe something, then in your awareness and your experience, it will seem to be so, but it's not so in heaven. It's not so in reality. So we're seeing here that as Chris is playing this thing out where whatever he desires, whether he desires to get rid of Rhea or he desires to bring her back to Earth, it's the desire for the outcome that's where the struggle comes in, because it's still looking to form to bring about the solution. Looks like Iso's just so content there. He's like, yeah, this is old stuff. I've been saying this for years. So let's see how he resolves this here. So that's very profound, yeah. As long as the past is believed to be real, then, as she's saying, the characters are just acting out what is believed to be real. And she's questioning, am I really Rhea? And he says, all I see is you. Well, this is the whole question in the mind, and it does come down to the shadow figures, like even in the Matrix, the Matrix trilogy, in the very end, Neo seems to disappear, but he saves the day, and all of the Sentinels, which were just search and destroy machines, start just dancing. They're all just dancing. It's obviously they've been repurposed somehow from to search and destroy to dance, So that's another good metaphor for changing our purpose in our mind so we can see the dance, behold the dance. But she's basically saying that the form is just predetermined to act out what the intention is in the mind. And really the only thing that sets the mind free is forgiveness. There is no particular form, no specific form that will set the mind free. It's just a different way of looking at the world, a different perspective on the world. It's perceiving it with the Holy Spirit. A higher perspective is the escape hatch that opens it up to remember. And she really was talking a lot there in these last couple minutes about memory. Like, how you remember me determines how I seem to be. If he remembered her wrong, if he remembered her from the past, then she will act that out. There's so many twists and turns, from him wanting to protect her, to not have her die. Then he finds her, she seems to have drank liquid nitrogen, committed suicide, and then when he puts her on the bed, he looks over her and he says, she's dead. And then Snow and Gordon have seen the resurrection. No, she's not. Gordon is so disgusted by the resurrection, she's not even going to stay there to see it. She's out the room, and Snow to follow. Like they've seen this many times. But, for him, that is a major thing. From her being dead to her resurrecting and still being there, he sees that as a big, important thing. Gives him another chance. But she basically is saying, this body is just acting out what you believe. How you remember me is determining how you're seeing me. And that's what Jesus is saying. As long as we're remembering our brothers and sisters from the past, we'll see them as shadow figures and bodies. And when we want the holy instant more than we want the past, we'll see them as light. Because they are light. Not because they will be transformed into light, because the veil then goes away. You take the judgment, the grievance away, and then the light was always there. It was just remembered wrong. The wrong mind that Jesus talks about is just remembering the world in a wrong way. And the right mind is the atonement, is remembering it in the moment, in this moment, in the holy instant. So you see, it's not just a time issue, present moment or past, but it's remembering in alignment with God, which is light, or remembering in out of alignment with God, which is linear time and physicality. So it's quite a thing, and yet he's having this discussion with Rhea because now he's like, you're alive. You're alive, it's a good thing. And she's saying, well, it all depends on how you're remembering me. I think she's seeing it's in the mind. If you remember wrong, you're going to perceive wrong-minded. If you remember right, then you're going to perceive with the correction. So this is a great... it's such a subtle movie for showing the investment in outcomes, which is really the investment in the body being the identity. That's what the investment in outcomes is. If I'm not invested in the body, then the outcomes aren't seen as real outcomes. But if I am invested in the body, then it's going to be positive, negative. But the mind doesn't, like Jabarian, the Jabarian character was saying, there are no solutions. He was meaning no solutions in form, only answers, only choices, he said. And that's what the Course is saying. Oh, you do have a choice here on how you look at it, but you don't really have a choice in form. You have a choice in purpose in the mind. Okay, here we go. Now we're going to see what happens. What's he do now? He's showing us the way. So at least Gordon's consistent. She wants to take out anything that's not human. That's her belief. And here a confession, the snow alternative gives an expression concession, and she right away says, I say we use Higgs boson. She's pretty consistently wanting anything that's not human dead. But I think what we've learned from the Matrix and from all the 13th floor and all these different things is that even that idea of the humans versus the machines, or the humans versus the clones, or the humans versus the copy, it's the same thing. Attack is just attack, no matter who you say is more real or less real, It's all the same thing. That's what, right now there's this huge paranoia about AI, artificial intelligence. But who says what's artificial and what's real in terms of intelligence? Computers? They're concerned the iPhones will take over the world or something, But it's still the projection of error onto time and space. It's the attack thoughts in the mind. It's the belief in separation from God. It has nothing to do with artificial intelligence. It's all artificial intelligence. All the schooling we had, I had 10 years of university on top of 6 years of junior high and high school, on top of grade school. It's propaganda. It's brainwashing. It's fake news. Education is fake news. How's that for extending the fake news idea? Because true intelligence would be, like Krishnamurti talks about, would be wisdom, would be from God or from the Holy Spirit. You know, it would be joy, it would be happiness and love. That has to be wisdom and intelligence. Attack cannot be wisdom. So it doesn't matter how you project it onto the machines or onto the humans, onto whatever. And I think that's the fear. So now, if that doesn't top everything, now we have a Solaris clone doing an expression session where his first moments of seeming to experience the world, and he ends up having to defend himself. But there is no solution in attack and defense in terms of form. That's why Jesus said, if someone smite you on one cheek, turn the other cheek. He was basically saying, if you want to know who you really are, you have to give up this attack-defense idea. So it's covering all the bases now. Let's see what happens. I think the light is going to make an appearance here. I think we talked about that earlier, that all of this attack and defense is around the body and what's real and who's deserving to live and who's supposed to get Higgs boson and destroyed. I think underneath all that is there's just a fear of the light. And, basically Gordon's saying she can't believe it's benign. She thinks it's out, the light is out to kill the humans. And then the Jabarian kind of character that came back, he says, why do you think it wants something? It's almost like that's important, what you determine, how you think of God. Is God loving? If God is loving, then why would there be a fear of disappearing into the light? But if you believe that God is something other than loving, then that would generate quite a fear of the Holy Spirit. That would be why people say, I want to hear the Holy Spirit, but I can't. Maybe deeper down, there's a fear that the Holy Spirit's perceived as a destroyer of humans. And you remember Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, the whole movie is predicated on the memory being deleted, and fighting against that memory deletion. But in the end, that's why if the holy instant is basically the experience of the light beyond the world, then it would be automatic to think that all the memories of time and space would disappear, because God didn't create them. So we should rejoice. Rejoice in your dementia. Rejoice. What's the other thing that they talk about? And Alzheimer's. Rejoice in your spiritual Alzheimer's. Rejoice in your spiritual dementia. Rejoice in your reverse amnesia. That's what we'll call a reverse amnesia. We forgot God, now let's remember God. Why not have a remembering God party and a forgetting the world party? I'm in. Maybe that's what I'll talk about during the celebration. Reverse amnesia or something like that. Okay, here we go. I think the light's about ready to make an appearance here. So this is beautiful. Even though he seems to have gone back to Earth, he's going in his mind to that point where Gordon was preparing the Athena to go to Earth, and he, instead of getting in with her, symbolically in his mind, he closes the hatch. It's like the Robert Frost poem, "The Road Less Traveled." He's literally turning away from the body escape route, symbolically in his mind, by not getting in there with him, with Gordon. because that's the body solution kind of thing. So here he is back on earth, but I think as he thought he cut his finger and he realized he didn't, wasn't bleeding. After he washed the blood away, he saw there was no cut there. Then he's going back in his mind to that alternative choice, to that point in mind where instead of trying to escape Solaris with a space capsule, the Athena, he's choosing again. He's choosing in his mind to look for an alternative, and that's really the symbol for all of us. That's what we have to do. Where our first inclination may be to look out for the body and look out for how can I escape this situation, this Solaris situation. We actually, instead of trying to escape the light, instead of looking to form as like a knee-jerk reaction to save the body, we need to go inside for the salvation. So to me, these are very, very strong symbols at this point, where he seems to thought he cut himself, he didn't, and then he's just pondering and going into his mind, like taking that alternative, going for the light, going for what is beyond the body. So we'll see. He's playing that out now in his mind. It's very symbolic. Wow, that's everything. that comes around full circle. Am I alive? Am I dead? We don't have to think like that anymore. Everything we've ever done is forgiven. Everything. That's everything right there. That is the teachings brought to full transfer and full demonstration. And this moment of recognition, this moment of remembrance, now you have it in your heart. Anytime you're drawn into an argument, anytime you're drawn into a disagreement, anytime you're drawn into an issue or a problem, the answer is already in there. Everything is forgiven. Everything. It's only our belief in time that generates a false issue, an issue that's not really there, an appearance of an issue, but it's just the meaning that's read onto something of the world. It's not a reality. And suddenly, with that ending, then we have a glimpse into the amazing teachings. All things work together for good. There are no exceptions except in the ego's judgment. And another one, let all things be exactly as they are. And another one, everything that seems to happen to me I ask for and receive as I've asked. It's the divine perspective that's there in forgiveness, and only the ego would try to project out a form that it holds up as an exclusion, as an exception. That something could still keep us from knowing who we are, still keep us from remembering the light. So thank you, that was an experience to go through. We went through that one together. That is definitely an answer to a prayer. I mean, that's a tall order. That was the theme on both poles, English and Spanish. Moving from guilt to guiltlessness. And what came through Ria's mouth was our guiltlessness. Everything is forgiven, everything. So that is the culmination of surrender. And to me that was beautiful too, when he seemed to choose to not go into the Athena in his mind, but instead to go as the space station was getting closer to the light and the sound got louder, but also as he's walking through there, he's calling out Riya's name. He's calling out for the love that's in his heart, that he still has and always had for Riya, whether she was dead, whether she was alive, whether she was resurrected, it didn't matter. He still was looking for Riya, even though he was told that she was gone. And Gordon had taken care of her and she's not coming back. He still was going there as everything was moving into the light, just calling out Riya's name. Reminds me a little bit of the very end of Mr. Nobody, when he's there in his old form, and he gets this biggest smile on his face, and his last word was Anna, Anna. This was Riya. But you see, it's a surrender into a love beyond the form. You know, he's just totally, here comes our little back for some more. ISO's back. But to me, that is the surrender, you know. That's no different than when we call upon the name of God and write those workbook lessons, 183, 184, you know, where we call upon the name of God and we let the name of God be the safe replacement in our mind for all the other little names that were invented, you know. So it's like one final big surrender to God, like, okay, God, that's what I've wanted all along. I was searching in the time and space construct for my identity, and I couldn't find it there. But I could forgive it. I could release it and let it go. We tried it on our own, but deep inside we've known we'd be back to set things straight. I guess it's meant to be forever, you and me, after all. And that also that beautiful Kenny Loggins song, Forever. Once I dreamed that you were gone. I cried, I tried to find you. I begged the dream to fade away and please awaken me. But night took a hold of my heart and left me with no one to follow. The love that I lost to the dark, I'll always remember. Forever in my heart, forever there you'll be. Even when I'm gone, you'll be here in me. You know, that's another great set of lyrics through the Kenny Loggins song. But it's basically saying, you know, that love, what's the matter? Lovers, maybe? The death will have no dominion. The body may disappear, but death will have no dominion. The light of truth shines on beyond the seeming loss, the seeming separation. But it's just the saying again, don't judge by appearances. Don't think that the form is the truth. Remember the light in your heart. Remember that love can never die. Remember that love is eternal, and that our eternal Creator never could lose a beloved child of light. And so, in the end, that's why we seem to fall like Chris did. He fell against the wall, and he crumpled up, and it was a lot of light and a lot of sound, and then this little boy, and a little child shall lead them. The little boy was there in the light, reaching out a hand, and then he reached for the hand, and then he had his final scene with Rhea. Okay, well, why don't we open it up, Pete, and see how everybody felt with that one. That is a movie to end all movies. That is what we've been praying for. A deep, deep, deep experience.
Okay, well, I've put the instructions in the chat there, if anybody would like to raise their hand. Okay, well, we can go to Esther. You can unmute there.
This is such an answer to a prayer. Wow. I've been really working with the lessons to train the mind to choose the present moment over anything else, because the mind wants to say, well, when are you going to go home from your mom's place, and what she's not going to be able to take care of herself, and all these hypothetical thoughts. And what the movie and your talk answered for me was, the strangest thing happens. I'll be with her in the room and she's about to measure her sugar, and then I'll leave the room for 1 split second, and she tells me that she injected the insulin when I know she didn't. It's not possible that she could have in that short a time. And I have to watch myself. I watch myself get all flustered, yell at her, tell her she's wrong, and realize that exactly the things that you're sharing with us, it's a choice and not something in form. But the thing I'm finding myself doing is I'm reframing a little bit. I'm saying, well, her sugar wasn't that high, so even if she didn't inject, it's going to be okay. But really what I'm saying is that I trust that whatever's happening is for the best. Isn't that right, David?
Yeah, it is like deepening faith and trust. That's what the whole journey is. And starting to really look inside and see, make that love and that acceptance your choice, and then let everything flow from that choice. So that way you see that it is a choice you can make. It's even said in the Course, heaven is a decision I must make. It seems to take the form of a decision because the ego made up choice, and now the Holy Spirit turns it around and says we can choose to let go of the outcomes of the world and accept the truth of who we are. So it feels like it's a very intensified mind training right now with you being there with your mother, because as you've said, that's where your big hooks are. That's where emotionally you can see when you want to get upset. That's the context for it. When you want to feel that you have to tell her something, that she needs to do something different, and you feel like you've got to do it with a lot of force, so she really pays attention. That's where the mind training is right now. You're just watching very closely to see where you still have an investment, and it's amazing how the situations are not by accident. It's all designed to have us choose the innocence, to choose the strength, and the Spirit knows what it is that we need to do to walk, what corridor we have to walk down to make that decision. So thank you again. Always thank you for your transparency. There you are. And with your phone, you're still hanging in with us. That's beautiful. Thank you, Esther. Oh.
Okay, well, next we can go to Diana in co-living. You can unmute there.
Hi, David. Wow. Yeah, this is the only movie you have to watch. I mean, this says it all. This is, for me, it was like going all the way to the center of the Tootsie Roll. Like, I mean, this was really deep for me. I mean, this is deep, just period. The one thing that just comes up immediately that comes up pretty strongly is 2 days ago, I just posted all the lessons on the different groups, and I closed my eyes, and this person that I had been with for a number of years, I had this vivid, we'll just say dream, whatever. Nighttime, daytime, it's all dream, right? So I had this vivid dream, but it was really quickly. He just showed up, sat beside me, and I told him, I said, get away from me. And he said, no, I'm not going to get away from you. And I had no charge. I was like, he's not going to get away from me. Would you look at that? It didn't upset me. And then I woke up, right? I mean, the eyes opened and daytime dream. But as I was watching the scene play out with George Clooney and Rhea, whatever her name is, I thought about their relationship, and then the relationship that I had with this person, this other body, and as I was watching the scenario between them and him playing out his projection of her and how he's seen her, the whole suicide and the pills and just the whole darkness that swirled around them, it reminded me of the last scene in Solaris. How the main character, I can't remember his name, but he could not come to grips with what was really happening. Like George Clooney, he couldn't come to grips with what was really happening. He went right back into this ego, like the coding. He just went right back into robot. Okay, no, everything's fine. Here's the pill. Remember, it's all good. Everything's great. And it just made me like sick in my stomach. I felt so nauseated. And she was trying to tell him, but he didn't have eyes to hear. He didn't have ears to hear, right? He wasn't able to receive what she was attempting to speak from her heart, because she had experienced, I guess because of this Solaris, this light experience, and he just wasn't able to receive it. And this hardcore, like you were talking about, the psychologist. And it's so funny because I freaking have, what the ego made spirit uses. Yeah, I love how you say that, right? Okay, so I have a background in transpersonal psychology and communication. That's like double funny, hello. And so I know that's hilarious, right? It is, it's hilarious. So he has like this Newtonian traditional psychology, and he just can't hear what she's saying. But in the very end, you could see where the unraveling was beginning to happen. It's like there was one scene where he was talking to, I think, Gordon, the black lady. Why did you send her back? Why would you do that? He wasn't happy about that. The ego was going crazy. Like he just couldn't deal with that. But when he chose not to go with her and he went back to Earth, you could see where the unraveling was beginning to happen, and he wasn't going to go back into, okay, I'm the coding, I'm the ego, because there was no cut on the finger. And then that's when she showed up and said, everything is forgiven. We're not dead or alive. Everything is forgiven. Yeah. And then the color of her picture, because it was gray, and then it was yellow. And it made me think I don't have to hold that person because that's over. Like what was with that person, that's over. And I don't have to, the picture can be yellow. There's a lightness that happened. And so everything shows up as this movie shows up as just a beautiful witness to the daytime dream from 2 days ago. So, and David, it's been calling me Solaris ever since I've been here because I didn't even know about Solaris, whatever. And there's these cars all over here called Polaris, these like ATV, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, okay, son, this is funny. Okay. So thank you, David, so much.
That's great. Thank you, Dion. Yeah, it was beautiful that final scene because it kind of went back and forth as if he had gone on the Athena and gone back to Earth and then was numb and didn't feel anything and tried to retrain himself back to Earth. But then when he was chopping and he seemed to cut himself, but then he washed and there was no cut, no wound. That was like a foreshadowing. Something's different. And what Jesus is telling us is, yeah, something's different. The perspective is different. And then as she shows up and says, we don't have to think like that anymore, she also said, we're together now. We're together now. That's mind. So ultimately, she's saying, we're together now. And even that symbol, that scenario of them, his eyes wide open, and the hug and the kiss, I would say that all took place in the real world. That all took place in the happy dream. That all took place in the mind. Beyond place, beyond Earth and Solaris, places. We don't have to think in terms of places anymore. We don't have to think in terms of dead and alive. That's one of the basic distinctions of the ego, dead and alive. How's that for a dualistic construct? And when you open up to forgiveness, you can equally forgive both those concepts of dead and alive in terms of the world of form. It's like saying, am I a dead illusion or am I an alive illusion? And the Spirit says, we don't have to think like that anymore. Jesus is like, that's ridiculous. But to the world, that's a big one. Life and death. Survival. Survive to live, to fight off death. And then the healing is we don't have to think like that anymore. We don't have to think with dualistic thinking. We can go for the Solaris solution, the light is, instead of the Polaris polarity of poles. Go for the Solaris, not the Polaris. We had a Polaris, actually. We had one of those at the monastery, but that was one of Jason's toys for a while. He had fun driving around on the monastery with it. But the Polaris is gone now, and the Solaris is here. Thank you. Beautiful.
Okay, well, we can go to Stephen. You can unmute there.
Hey, thank you. Hey, I'm just thrilled to jump in here because this was fun. It was profound. Your setups are just so spot on in my dream in terms of like, wow, he's talking about the shadow. And I've been paying attention to shadows lately, literally, and in teachings and watching that play out. And I'm thinking, well, go figure. Here's what I need shows up to confirm what's going on for me. And then somehow you're picking that up. And I'm thinking, well, no, it's all one mind. Why am I even surprised? So that was a beautiful setup. And this was a great movie. But I want to go back to that theme you were talking about where I saw that as he's like going back, and he was talking about making adjustments along the way. I nod more relaxed. I'm listening more. And as if that's like another incarnation to where he's starting to pick up this idea. And then he says, though he was haunted by the idea that I remembered her wrong. And I thought, oh, I love that, because yes, he remembered Rhea wrong in terms of the specialness relationship, but in the bigger picture, he remembered the truth wrong, and he was still trying to live out that specialness dream and that specialness aspect. And then he said that somehow I was wrong about everything. And boy, doesn't that hit home with resign now as your own teacher, that you've been wrong about everything, not just this or that, but the whole everything part. So I loved how that tied in. And then he didn't go back with Gordon. He made that other choice because he was done with that cycling back and had seen how that, no, he wasn't making that choice anymore. I love the symbol of the innocence at the end with the little boy, and how I just saw that as connecting with his innocence, our innocence, and recognizing that. And then that beautiful coupling, if you will, the union of we don't have to think dualistically anymore and everything is forgiven. I love that, saw that the same way. Took down some other notes. There was some fun stuff that, your whole Polaris and Solaris. What happened for me is thinking in terms of ego's perspective. I think of it as looking at through binoculars. It's kind of like if I'm looking with ego, I'm looking through binoculars, and the specifics are being magnified, and my mind is split. And if I'm looking with spirit, I'm looking through a monocle. In other words, I'm going to get a whole different point of view. So who am I doing it with? Do I have my binoculars on and just being in the trough of specifics? Or do I have spirit's monocle on and just helping to let mine eye be single, having that vision of Christ and look past all the specifics? And boy, what a difference that, of course, makes. And I wanted to get annoyed with Eric. I think Eric I think when Rhea fell and she drank the liquid oxygen, I thought that's Eric's fault, because Friday night he showed us the clip of the mouse being dipped in the liquid oxygen as part of that. So I thought she must have watched Eric's Friday night presentation with the clip from the abyss about becoming adjusted to a new way of thinking. And I thought that's just liquid oxygen. So I blame Eric for that. There was also another piece that I had fun with. It was this whole thing with the other woman. When Rhea found out there's another woman, there's another me. I thought, isn't that the classic jealousy trap set up in the ego's dream? I thought that was funny. And then how it is a mistake to become emotionally attached to one of them, and meaning the projections. And I thought, isn't that true? And with your map, the perceptual level, the emotional level, the thoughts, the beliefs, the desire, yes, it's a mistake to become emotionally attached to one of our projections. And I just thought, and he says, then you become manipulated by them, by the emotions, by the projections. And I thought, boy, isn't that the loop-de-loo of that horizontal, just here we go again, let me get the emotions right. I liked how that played out in my mind. But one thing I had fun with was, I'm not a scientist, but when they were talking about the Higgs boson principle and all this, I thought, okay, there's something in here. And my mind picked up on that. And they're referring to what everybody probably understands as the God particle. And what the God particle is it gives particles mass. So the God particle, God, the ego particle gives particles mass. So it turns the projection into forms. So she was saying Gordon was right on top of it with the forgiveness lesson. She said, we got to zap these projections with the Higgs anti-boson particle. And to me, that rang true as saying, that's forgiveness. We got to unwind these projections. Don't give them mass. Don't give them matter. Get back into the mind. So I kind of saw that as a humorous take on, she was real quick to say, zap them with the Higgs anti-boson, blast them with that. So that's kind of a teaching there I saw for myself of release it, forgive all the projections, forgive all the particles with the antimatter Higgs boson God particle thing. So I loved how that played out. So much fun stuff here, and truly thank you. And thank everyone. And for the Friday Time seminar, it's just been playing out in my mind, very timely. And there was something here I wrote down. remember, time heals all wounds, right? I mean, it's not true. But thank you, David. And just thank you also for the seminar this past weekend. Svava, thank you for your hermitage and sharing that and just the beautiful stuff coming through there. I really resonated with all of that. So good stuff.
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, that's good. That's a beautiful reinterpretation too of. I think Gordon did say they'll just disappear to back where they came from, which you could interpret as back to the mind, just back to being thoughts in the mind, and not projected out, but forgiven instead. So it's good. That just shows how everything can be reinterpreted to the light, handed to the light. Okay, Pete, how are we doing? We have anybody else?
We have two hands. We have Juliana and Kamisko Living.
Okay, hi, Juliana.
Hello, Dave. Good to talk to you again.
Yeah.
So the movie brought me a quantum experience. I was feeling very high, and mainly in the last 30 minutes or so. All the movie, you were guiding us to show how we only see the past. And this is something that I am in the last few days or so. I am more and more, or actually training my mind to perceive this often, all the time. And then also something that I am training, and with the movie was even bigger, easier to see, is like I start to see recently that all these preferences we have, all these judgments, preference, or everything, the ego's thought system. We if I can put everything together in a ball and be able to visualize the ball with some distance, for me, it's easier to hand over to the spirit doing this way, because once it's all the same, there's no difference between them. So I'm kind of getting this to be easier for me. But then, so I start to do this during the movie and the last 30 minutes. And then what happened is, came to me very strongly, also something that, again, I am training my mind to see, is like what you explained to us about the levels of the mind, the desire being in the center. I am realizing that I have had, today was the strongest one, but it's not the only time in the last few days or so, that when I am able to access very strong the desire for not being living in these patterns, whatever which one I'm talking about, or all together, it's like really a portal to open the quantum. Has been like this more than one time. So yeah, when I could do this now during the movie, was when like, whoa, like all the quantum world appeared very clear. And I almost like went back, because it's so, when suddenly this gets so clear in a window, it's like we lose our breath. And it's the same time, if I can get the willingness strong to hand over, to surrender to the light, oh, it's a gorgeous experience. It's very, very, very beautiful. Yeah, so I just want to share it all with you, and I'm very grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Juliana. That's so profound, what you were describing, because when you put it all in the ball right in front of you, and you feel the peace and oh, I can do this. I can forgive this. That's really the first principle in the book out of 50 miracle principles, that there's no order of difficulty in miracles. And the reason there's no order of difficulty is because they're all the same. And you can notice that's how the ego always tries to sneak in there. Oh, what did I do wrong? Or what am I missing? Or, it's always coming from a place of wrongness. And when you bring it all together in that ball and just smile, then that's like going into remembering it right, in terms of simplicity, because that sameness is so important to welcome the miracle. As long as there's a part of the mind that still wants to make exceptions, still would prefer this outcome instead of that outcome, it can't see that they're all the same. But as soon as you really step back, and I like the way you say practice it, this is what I've really been practicing. It's like you latch on to something that's really the key, that's really simple, and then you just write it. You just write it, you practice it. So that's beautiful. That's a good example for all of us about how strong we can be in our minds. And I could see the smile on your face. That's why. It's beautiful. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we've got Susan Jameson here. You can unmute that.
Hello, good evening.
Hi, Susan.
Hi. I had to come on for a moment because there's so much here. I mean, it was so great. And I feel if I just close my eyes, like it's all here, it's all the light. And it was all in this film showing us that it's all here. And like Stephen, there's so much fun stuff. I mean, I looked up the movie. It was made in 1976. That's when The Course was out. My Parable, when I found The Course. And also, I've talked about other teachers. And, I've mentioned this. It makes me a little nervous. But, a few of these, when they weren't human. At least that's how they presented themselves, as beings and not human. But they weren't about the drama. They were all about the purification and all about the peace. And I really felt that, in this movie, just trying to kind of hear their whispers of breathe and release and just feel, and it was all about the light and the light and the light, all about the light. So yeah, there was so much in this movie. It's like, you're right. We can go. I don't know how you follow this, but it's done. We're home. This whole thing is a projection. And then for quickly, a little more fun, when I worked with these multidimensional beings, frankly, and I went to Egypt and Greece and Peru, and we were looking at the separation. All the faces of what they call the separation of the feminine were in this film represented. Athena, we kept hearing Athena. Mm-hmm. Let's see if I can read my own writing. Aphrodite was represented by Rhea. I need my glasses here. Gordon was Hera. Sekhmet, Snow, and the cow goddess, Chris. So the way they explained it, when all the faces of the feminine would come together, then Christ, would be back here. I mean, so I don't remember much of anything, but these little whispers are just coming back into my mind. So I have a lot to just pray about. But also, this first teacher was in a dream the other night. And it was very, very strong for me. And also, I've been thinking and dreaming about my friend Henry, who had a company named Solaris. So it's a lot, seemingly, but really it isn't. It's nothing, because all of everything, was just a dream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. That gives that feeling like it's a wrap We really got to the end of. It's a wrap now. That's good. New interpretation.
Okay, just some of the well, it's all really in the Course. I mean, that's what's amazing. I don't know why, and thank God I surrendered and the journeys that we seem to go on. But it's all in the Course in an abbreviated, as you say, here it is in one package. It's a wrap. But some of the beings, how they shared, I mean, it's all so beautiful, and it was really represented in this film. So just thank you. It's very beautiful.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you, Susan. Yeah, thank you for that.
Great.
Beautiful. Even I got a message just recently that was, I think it was from my friend Netta, who was writing to me about a dream that she had, where she was back in primary school and wondering what she was doing at a musical, rehearsing for a musical in primary school. And then she said, I was walking in a circle and I heard your voice talking through the speakers. I can't remember all that you said, but one thing that came through very clear was that you said, the script is written. This is in the dream over the speakers as she's preparing for some primary school thing, and she's thinking, what am I doing in primary school? This is ridiculous and everything, and talking to the characters, but she said a bit scary, but that was good. The script is written. I then woke up and saw this video. Of course, you're saying the same thing, same line in this video multiple times. Haha. Thank you for being in my nighttime and daydreams, dear David. The symbols are everywhere, that we need not fear or buy into any type of fear, because we have the power to reinterpret anything that comes our way. And that was beautiful. I guess Helena Elias, I saw your message too on there. She was saying about her son that was had to be rushed to the hospital. That was very powerful. I just read that before I came over for the movie with a seizure. And I was just sharing with everybody here how you were saying how that really was a fear that Jesus wouldn't be able to be there with you during an extreme situation or an emergency, somehow that your fear would block Jesus from being there. And then through this experience, you actually felt Jesus was there with you, and you could feel the presence. And with your two younger boys, how you just calmly could tell them their part to play. And maybe you could just share a bit about that, because that sounded like it was truly miraculous with what would seem to be a pretty extreme situation, just thoughts of fear of loss and all kinds of things that you were facing.
Yeah, thank you, David. Yeah, it was really the scariest thing I think I've felt like in my adult life. Danny was the one who was holding him and screamed for me, and I called 911 for help because Leo's lips were turning blue and he appeared to be like going and not breathing, and that's it. It just looked like the life was out of him, and it just felt like, I had this stability inside, and I just, it was like the spirit was coming through the paramedic on the phone and just helping me stay grounded and like focus on Leo's breathing. And I was to just watch his breathing. And then I was, just guided to ask Zach to check for the paramedics and bring them upstairs when they came. And Milo was right beside his twin brother, and he'd be like, "Mama, is he dead?" And I said, "No, he's still breathing. Let's watch his breathing." And he went downstairs and got Leo a blanket, and he put it on him to keep him warm. And then he got a pillow, and it was just like they were just all fulfilling their part. It was like this beautiful orchestration. And yeah, and like I said, after the Jesus retreat, you know, it was spoken that, like, and it's in the course too, that he will be there no matter what, in any situation. And I noticed a doubt thought when that was shared on the retreat, and it was like, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. Like, what if I'm filled with fear? And, you know, it's also said that, like, if we're fearful, we'll block the voice. Like, we won't hear the Spirit. Well, I just had this massive doubt. Like, what if I'm faced with something really scary and I can't, and I need help, and I need the Spirit, and I need that strength in me and guidance, and I won't be helped. Like, it was just this fear. And then the situation was like that, like, felt very scary. And I just felt this inexplainable strength, even though my heart was racing and I was nervous. Like, still through all of that, there was this presence inside of me that I needed to experience and feel, like, that, gosh, you know, it's true that he does come through. It's true that the Spirit will reach me or reach us, or that there's support and love surrounding us no matter what. And it just, like, the day after, I was just shown all of it, like how it was all just there. And it always is. It's just a misperception that it's not. And yeah, it was just a very profound experience for me, because it cleared that doubt in a very big way. It was forgiven, you know, and I'll always have that memory and that inner knowing that truly he'll come.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I love the way you said your two younger boys were just so involved in the scene, which just, to me, that's the miracle. It's like we see it more from a holistic perspective instead of like a personal one. Like, everybody played their part, and you could feel the inner calmness inside that was beholding that everything's okay. Everyone's playing their part, you know, because that's like being a miracle worker. That's bringing the calmness to the situation instead of just succumbing and giving way to the fear. That's a good example of be vigilant only for God and His kingdom. You really stayed in there with that, and now you can witness to it and say, yeah. So it sounds like you grew stronger through the whole thing, more convinced, more feeling that Jesus is there. He says, I am not absent to you in any situation. And that's a pretty strong, witness of that, for sure.
Yeah, I needed to feel that and know that in a big way. And it definitely was my experience. And it's given me the stability, because, like, this parenting thing, you know, I often tell Jesus, I'm like, you got the wrong girl. Like, I can't do this. I'm not strong enough. Like, this is a tough thing to unwind from. But, like, and I call for help a lot, you know, and sometimes I don't hear anything, but it was just so profound to know that presence actually is there, and that He is with me through this whole unwinding, from no matter what the characters are or the images are, you know. It was very deep.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that with all of us. Yeah. That's the part that's so uplifting, just when we have these strong experiences, and then we can start to slowly transfer them to more and more aspects of our experience. Yeah.
Thank you, David.
Thank you. Thank you, Helena. Beautiful. Well, I think we've reached the end of our session here. And, yep, we do have to wind down because this will be replayed on tomorrow and Friday, and we have a Brazil thing coming up. So I think we're just in 5 minutes inside that 4.5. Give Eric 5 minutes to transform the studio. As long as we have the Latin group have just as much as you had to talk and express there. Marina will be there talking with her little stopwatch on the side, and that's a wrap. We can handle time and space. We can handle these things. So, yeah. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining. I'm glad you enjoyed going down the rabbit hole with me tonight. I was so touched with the poll, and then when I looked at some of the movies that were presented, I think that was second on the list, and I was like, ooh, Solaris. Oh, yes. That is one of the ones that I can feel the swirl in my heart whenever I think of it. So thank you, and God bless you all, and we'll see you again. Thank you.